Hey guys, it's Nicole. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel if you are new here. Don't forget to subscribe. I like to post about books and music, mostly Taylor Swift. Today I'm going to be doing my June wrap-up of all of the books that I read in the month of June. If my eyes look so brown around the skin, it's because I've been using Babe Lash, the lash growing serum. I think it's causing some discoloration. I'm only a week in, so I have no results yet, but like, do I keep going and just look like I have just the most exhausting life? I really want to stick with it, but oh my god, this is not it. So the very first book I read in the month of June is actually sponsored, so thank you so much to Stephanie and James Wilson for sending me your book for review. So The Backpack Years features two anonymous memoirs told in alternating points of view between a husband, James, and wife, Stephanie. So it's one story about their experience in the early 2000s backpacking, then meeting each other, then getting married, then going on another backpacking trip through Asia to try to fix their marriage. Sounds messy, sounds like exactly the kind of business I want to stick my nose into. What surprised me about this book was it was kind of sad. There's definitely a hopeless air to it. They are two young people in their early 20s, not really knowing what they're doing with their life. It hits a little too close to home. They're both so full of wanderlust. And once they meet each other, they deal with so many sad situations involving work visas and immigrations and American healthcare. And they get married very suddenly because they both know they found the one and want to continue dating. It's also very sad to see the kind of fights that James is picking with Stephanie once they actually are married, but this book is written in hindsight, so there is some self-reflection and self-awareness. He broke down why he was acting the way he was, how his family influenced him, and it's really great to see. I think it's incredibly vulnerable and honest. They successfully tackle the taboo topic of money issues and how that can put such a stress on a young relationship. And it's so sad because they say that money doesn't buy happiness, but like all of their fights were related to money. I guess the Asia trip really gave them perspective for what they do have, because what are you gonna do? The United States has an astronomical wealth gap. If you're born into poverty, you're likely going to stay in it. So they were able to kind of put their problems into perspective while seeing these very impoverished countries. Maybe they came to the conclusion that they should just do their best because it could always be worse. I do give them props for going on a vacation to fix their marriage instead of having a kid. I've only ever heard of people creating other people to solve their problems, but then again, I am in the Bible Belt and I applaud them for not bringing someone else into that mess. These people have very different priorities from me, so it was super interesting to read about such differently minded people. I liked the pacing and storytelling, and while James' chapters are written in an English format and Steph's are written in an American format, the method of detail-oriented storytelling is very consistent. I feel like they coordinated their voices to really read like one story, and I appreciate that. I'm really glad they sent it to me so I could step out of my comfort zone. I was going to rate this 3 out of 5, but then the ending was really nice because it shows where they've been since those trips in the early 2000s, so that does bump it up to 3.5 probably. And it was a satisfying ending. There's nothing I didn't like about this book. I don't have any critiques. I think it's a great story and well written. I just don't think it's quite for me. It just makes your 20s seem so daunting and uncertain, and maybe that's true, but like, you don't gotta remind me. You do really want to root for these characters, but they were dealt some really awful cards and needed a lot of strength to pull through. It was really interesting. I recommend it to anybody who likes travel and I guess like the harsh realities of life. Nothing was sugar-coated in any way. If you like honest, nitty-gritty realist writing, this is definitely for you. I feel like people who like to go camping would like this book. I am not one for camping, but I really feel like there is just a very specific demographic that would love this story. I will have links to this book down in the description if you would like to purchase it. Thank you again to Stephanie and James for sending me this novel and being so vulnerable with your experiences. I can tell that this book really has the potential to leave a huge impression on someone. Okay, so moving on to the next book that I read in June. I almost said 2022. We are not at the end of the year yet. We're halfway through. Hate that. Next, I continued my trek of plowing through the Warrior Cats Super Editions. So next was Crooked Star's Promise. So this is another Super Edition that follows a cat's entire life. So literally from the second he is a kitten to him becoming leader. We see the Dark Forest trope appearing again in this one. Crooked Star is essentially tricked. He doesn't really know what is going on. He thinks he's in StarClan. That aspect of the Warrior series was always so interesting and creepy to me because it's giving very Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, to be able to fall asleep and go to like this horrible nightmarish place, and as things are happening to you in your sleep, things actually happen to you physically while you are sleeping. A major theme in this one is Crooked Star's faith in StarClan as the Dark Forest cats try to make it waver. I rated it 3 out of 5. This one was okay. My favorites so far have definitely been Yellowfang's Secret and the one about Blue Star. I can't remember what that one was called, but the next one I read was Yellowfang's Secret. secret, I really liked this one because this character might be one of my absolute favorites. I loved that this one followed her entire life also, because with Yellowfang, I can only picture her just as this rickety old woman, and to see her as a child is just a really strange concept. So because Yellowfang was a cat who switched clans from Shadow Clan to Thunder Clan much later in her life, the majority of her life takes place in Shadow Clan, and we had never seen that until this point. So it was nice to have a book from the perspective of like the inside of Shadow Clan. We don't really see their perspective much, and they're kind of painted out to be the villain oftentimes. I feel so bad for this character. Her life sucked, man. I mean, warrior cats in general is just really dark. Definitely for some characters more than others. I rated this one 4 out of 5 stars. It was really good, and it was so interesting to see her being trained as an apprentice and the dynamics between her and her mentor, because Yellowfang was originally going to be a warrior before she was chosen to be a medicine cat. It's just crazy to see that side of her. This also goes more into the logistics of how a medicine cat can hide their pregnancy since they're not allowed to have children, and how they're able to like give birth away from the clan and nobody knows, and it's this like secret thing, which happens constantly, by the way. Nobody follows that rule. This showed the logistics of it more than when this happened to Leaf Pool. It didn't really show a whole lot of that because I think that happened between arcs. This was not slow at any point. It was just full of action and storyline, and the entire series before the Super Edition came out, I think just really set this Super Edition up for success because it was a very juicy story. There were so many things going on in this cat's life, and to get the behind the scenes just really brought everything together. Next, I read Tallstar's Revenge. So this was a story taking place from the perspective of Wind Clan. That's what I really like about the Super Editions, is you see something other than Thunder Clan. I did not realize that Wind Clan had 2 different types of like jobs for their cats. Like some warriors would be moor runners and others would be tunnelers that were doing all these things underground in these like rabbit tunnels, and the other ones would run through the fields and like catch prey that way. This had some really unfortunate family dynamics because Tallstar's father really wants him to be a tunneler, Tallstar wants to be a moor runner, and also the entire clan kind of looks down on tunnelers, which is a weird dynamic. Like everybody kind of wants to be a moor runner, they don't want to live their whole life underground. So he and his dad spend a lot of time fighting, and then a little bit later on in the book there is this awful tragedy where a cat dies, and Tallstar goes on this quest to seek vengeance. So that's where the title comes in, and it's a lot of internal conflict for him because he is debating whether or not he is actually a murderer. I rated this one 3 out of 5 stars. I liked seeing Wind Clan's perspective. I liked that this showed how traditional Wind Clan is in contrast to the other clans, because they kind of kept a lot of the same traditions from the Dawn of the Clans arc. The beginning was a little slow. It was just a lot of disagreements between Talltail and his father. He was really conflicted with wanting to be a moor runner but not wanting to let his dad down, and he was just giving it his best shot to please his father. Most of the conflict in this book is just a lot of Tallstar arguing with himself. There's a really cute ending, especially in the manga in the back of the book, that kind of ties into Firestar, which is one of the most beloved characters, the main leader of Thunder Clan, main protagonist of the whole series, and we learn a little bit more about his family, who are all kitty pets, which is like house cats. Next, I read Bramblestar Storm. At first, this seemed really interesting because there was a natural disaster happening in the beginning, and I don't think that had been done before, well, other than forest fires, but this one deals with floodwaters that are rising and taking over all of the clan's territory, so it's much harder to hunt. They have to move their camp. Bramblestar really is leading in the shadow of Firestar, so he feels it is up to him to take in all these other displaced cats that are not in the clans at all, but that are struggling due to these floodwaters. He's met with a lot of criticism, both with cats inside his clan and other clans as well. They look down on him for this, especially when he's taking in house cats whose people abandoned them when their homes flooded. We see that point in time when Bramblestar and Squirrelflight are really not on good terms after Squirrelflight lied to him about how their children were not actually their children. This is such a cat soap opera, but we see them like having these rifts, but also Squirrelflight is his deputy, so they have to kind of get along to get things done. A lot of internal struggle again just within Bramblestar's head. It has a really happy ending in the manga. What I liked about this was that we saw what it was like for 2 cats who have broken up, I guess. I rated this one 3 out of 5. Next, I read Mothflight's Vision. So this was a story about the very beginning of the clans and the very first ever medicine cat, and the lack of respect that this cat had when she was like saving everybody's asses was just horrible, especially knowing how in present times they are so respected in their clans. So we meet Mothflight, who is a cat in Wind Clan, and she is just terrible at her warrior training. She gets distracted so easily by plants, and she always wants to like bring different plants back to the camp, and her mother is so frustrated with her. Her mother is the leader, actually. She ends up being able to talk to Star Clan and Star clan is advising her on how to create the formation of all of the medicine cats, and they pretty much tell her like, we need this cat from each clan to be that clan's medicine cat, and you have to go spread this message. And nobody believes her because she's like this young cat who is just terrible at her warrior training. Nobody wants to take her word for it. It's horribly unfortunate, and she even starts to doubt herself. She thinks, what if I am just imagining all of this, or I'm just dreaming? There's a horrible tragedy in this book of two cats who really like each other, and one of them gets killed, and I literally cried. Like, I had not a good morning that day. Sometimes these warrior cat deaths just hit, and it's awful because there are so many. I rated this one 4 out of 5. I really like this one because I like how it told the backstory of all of the medicine cats and why they are not allowed to take a mate or have children. It also showed how the very first leader of the clans got their 9 lives, so it has a lot of explaining of how everything is actually happening in the present times, and I'd say it does this way more efficiently than the Dawn of the Clans arc, because it just dragged forever, and it was so sad, and nothing was ever making any sense or falling into place about why things are the way they are in the present. This one has the same kind of family dynamics where Mothflight just wants to make her mother proud, but it's very difficult because she's not doing exactly what her mother planned out for her, kind of like with Tallstar and his father, so that family fighting repeats itself in this one. This one in general has just like almost no actual fighting in it, which I liked. It was very mystical and heavy on the fantasy aspect of these novels. The cat who loses their mate in this one, their grief is just so palpable that it like sent me into a spiral. Something about the way it was written was just superior, and I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. Next was Hawkwing's journey. So this pretty much just explains what happens to Sky Clan during Vision of Shadows when this clan has to come back to all the other ones because they got like banished a long time ago, but then they get kicked out of their territory again, so they have to go find the rest of the 4 clans, and it's like a lot of journeying in this one. This one has an insane amount of just sad shit in it. Like, it was just, I wasn't crying at any point, but it was just such a downer to read. The ending is kind of uplifting though, and the manga especially is more uplifting than the story itself. I rated it 3 out of 5. It was pretty much just Vision of Shadows from Sky Clan's perspective, and much more efficient because it obviously is shorter than a whole 6-book long arc. This book felt like 3 different books in one because it was just so awfully sad that it felt like 3 different plot points, all different tragedies happening in one book. There was a lot of journeying scenes, and they were filled with so much confusion, which just made it a bit too long. Not confusion for the reader, just confusion for the characters. Like, they just did not know what they were doing, and it's really sad to see. And then I finished up the month with my Policeman. I'm going to have a reading vlog up on this very soon. I saw one Harry Styles trailer. I didn't even know this book existed, and I was like, I have to read that immediately. I will give like my full review in that one, but I was really debating between 4 and 5 stars out of 5, and I think it's going to be kind of 4.5. I definitely enjoyed it like just as much as Where the Crawdads Sing, which is not quite 5 stars, but not quite 4. I think it's just right in the middle. I hate that Goodreads doesn't have half stars. This is a very good book to read in these times as we are losing the right to privacy in the United States. In this case, it is LGBTQ, and what you do behind closed doors as a consenting adult can be held against you. You can be blackmailed with it, and you can be sent to prison all because of that. Similarly to how people with uteruses can no longer have HIPAA. Essentially, if someone knows something that you did in a doctor's office, they can get you sent to prison. And it's a very slippery slope to be taking away rights from people because it's going to affect everybody. Like, we see that in the story with LGBTQ people in England in the 1950s, where if one person is going to be oppressed due to these laws, it's going to affect everybody around them. It makes me think of the way women making choices about their own health, if anybody helped them do that, if anybody assisted them financially or even drove them to clinics, those people are also going to have their lives ruined. It's just, this is something Americans really need to read right now. Other than that, it's told in a very British, very old style language way, and the first half kind of drags a little, I'm not gonna lie, but the second half definitely picks up. 2 of the characters, Marion and Tom, are completely intolerable. It's essentially a story of a love triangle between 2 gay lovers, and then one of them has a wife, and they both are just competing for this one man, and it's just dreadful, and it's told from only their 2 perspectives. So the love interest doesn't even tell his side of the story. I kind of wanted him to, but at the same time, I think that's the entire point. We just see these people so obsessed with this man that they will ruin their lives over it, and we're never going to understand how someone is going to be worth that unless you are actually in it yourself. Tom and Marion, the married couple of the 3, are quite intolerable because they hold each other's disadvantages over each other's head. Tom loves to uphold the patriarchy and saying Marion can never work if they are to have kids because she needs to stay home with the kids, and then Marion loves to hold over Tom's head that he has this like gay lover. It's so ridiculous, and they're like 21 when they're married. And then Patrick is over here here, and he's in his 30s, and he's like an established man who believes women should be able to go to work. He's very comfortable in his sexuality. He just deserved so much better. I'm so sad. There's a lot of beautiful passages and quotes from this book. It's quite devastating. I'm nervous and intrigued for how Harry is going to portray Tom, because I definitely see him more as Patrick, because Tom is this police officer, first of all, and he's built like a Barbie Ken doll on steroids. Like, he's very buff, giving lifeguard vibes, and he's blonde, and that's a confusing way to picture Harry because he's this like tiny brunette lad, and also the content is so much heavier than I expected, so I just really hope he is up for the challenge of dealing with this kind of topic. But yeah, I really did enjoy it, and I'm glad I picked this up very impulsively. I would recommend it. You just have to get through that first half, I promise you. And that is all the books that I read in June. I would love to know what your TBR for the month of July is down below. Also, feel free to leave me any requests down in the comments, whether that's something to do with music or something to do with books. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Thank you so much again to Stephanie and James for sending me your book for review. If you want to follow me on my Instagram, it is right here, and if you want to follow me on my TikTok, that is right here. I will see you all next week for another video, and I hope you have an amazing day. Bye guys.